Hey everyone, I was going to make a video on the Houston Rocket stuff. I just feel like this is more important. Something just happened to me once again in regards to the Angel Gabriel. And I kind of want to go back and explain some of these things that have been building up and some of these very weird occurrences that have keep happening in my life. You know, even the Isaiah Thomas thing, I just realized Isaiah Thomas, his sister died in the Toyota Camry that looks almost identical to the Toyota Camry that I drive or I own, but my girlfriend is the one who drives it. And then Isaiah Thomas lost a tooth in the game, and literally the same tooth that he lost, my girlfriend is missing that tooth, and she just lost it a couple months ago. I mean, it's some pretty strange stuff. And whatever, tonight I just made a couple more blog posts in regards to the king symbolism. Even in the commercials of the games tonight, they had a movie in regards to King Arthur, and it said king versus king. And the Kia commercial, they even sing about the king. And I realized that Queen Elizabeth is 91 years old this year. If you write out King Charles III, it equals 91. And I talked about all these connections on my blog from the Seattle area and how it connects to the Houston Rockets. And the Rockets play in the Toyota Center. We got a story in regards to Toyota Tacomas being recalled on the same day that we got the death of the Michael Mantenuto, the guy from the movie Miracle. And then the very next day, another guy from the movie Miracle died. And that guy, the first guy, Michael whatever, he died in Des Moines, Washington, just after I had posted it about how Des Moines was significant to the number 29. But anyway, in regards to the king stuff and whatnot, I just made a blog post in regards to all this king stuff. I go in the kitchen to eat some ramen noodles or to make some ramen noodles. And let me pull up another web page here. So when I go to throw away the little wrapper that comes on the ramen noodle cup, I looked at the trash, and right next to the trash can, there was this box right here that says King's Crown. And I guess it's a box of oranges. I don't know where we even got this from. Like, I don't know if my girlfriend bought some oranges. I don't even see the oranges in the fridge or in the cupboard or anything. So it's strange. We never buy oranges, really. I don't know. It blew me away. I'm like just posting about kings, and then I go in the kitchen and this box is sitting by the trash can. And then I realized that it's just after midnight, so it's now May 4th, a lot like 54. Gabriel equals 54 and 135 in reverse. Ramen noodles, the reason I went into the kitchen, equals 54 and 135 in simple gematria. So it even has a connection to Gabriel on a day that is connected to Gabriel. But anyway, so a while back, and on the video I made when I first came back here, I had talked about how there was this ring symbolism that was going on in my life, and I couldn't figure out what it was, or I didn't understand the full meaning of it. And all these people keep trolling, and they're still doing it, but a bunch of people keep trolling on a post that I made on March 26th of last year. And I found out that March 26th is the syntax of Gabriel. And basically what that is, it's a celebration of Gabriel coming to the Virgin Mary to tell the Virgin Mary that she was going to birth Jesus Christ, basically. So what's interesting is the angel Gabriel only comes to 3 people in the Bible. He comes to the Virgin Mary, he also comes to Zechariah, and he comes to Daniel. And when my uncle died, there was a whole bunch of stuff that was pointing to the book of Daniel, and I went and read the book of Daniel. It even involves Xerxes, and we had Family Guy with the Falcon episode with Xerxes, and the Falcons were in the Super Bowl. I talked about how my uncle's death was connected to the Falcons being in the Super Bowl. Another thing in regards to that I was just thinking about, in the book of Daniel, it talks about the fourth king in the north who is the wealthiest of all the others, right? And then he comes there to basically stir up the people against Greece. And just think about that in regards to Donald Trump, you know. And then the fifth one is the mighty king or whatever, according to the book of Daniel. So it's just interesting to me in regards to that. And then Isaiah Thomas is really connected into this as well, and his nickname is the King in the Fourth, or the King of the Fourth, and it is a play on the Game of Thrones, the King in the North, right? And then he's the King of the Fourth, and in the book of Daniel, the guy that is Trump-like is the King in the North. And in regards to Daniel, Zechariah, and Mary, you know, I've been doing Gematria for a while now, for a pretty long time. I discovered Zachary K. Hubbard a long time ago, and I've been following him for a very long time. I feel like we have this connection, whatever it is. I know other people have done Gematria before him. I've never seen anybody do it the way that he was doing it, you know. And I was sort of doing it, but I wasn't doing it at the level that he was. And I learned a whole lot from him. And it's just interesting that the angel will only talk to, you know, Zechariah, Daniel, and Mary. And something happened on the Gematria Effect 2 weeks ago. I guess there was one tonight, but something happened on that 2 weeks ago that I'm going to talk about later on in this video. But I guess let's get started here on some things that I discovered. Actually, before I even get into this here, and I'm just going to explain a little bit about the Angel Gabriel and how some of the dates and numbers that I keep talking about, how it's connected to the Virgin Mary and whatnot. But I keep getting trolled on my Gabe Rygard video like no other too. The guy from Axeman who died, and, you know, Gabe, whatever. So Gabe, Gabriel, there's been all kinds of stuff. If you come to my blog, because I just, it would take forever if I go through and re-look up everything. But I have so many posts in regards to Gabriel that keeps coming up in my life. It's unbelievable. And some of the things that are happening, it's just like, how is this truly happening? For example, just one more example before I even get into this. So one night I made this post about Shia LaBeouf, or however you say his name, and this movie, we got an article about how his movie only sold one ticket. And I looked up the movie, and whatever, there's Alec Baldwin and whatnot, but anyway, the movie's called Man Down, and the character that he plays is Gabriel Drummer. Gabriel equals 45 and 54. Shia LaBeouf equals 45 and 54. The story or whatever was on 4-4, which had a date numerology of 45, 4 plus 4 plus 20 plus 17. And it was also the same day we got a story about Tony Romo that equals 45. 44, like April 4th, equals 45 and 54, just like Gabriel, just like Shia LaBeouf. That's why we got these stories on that same day. And it was talking about the UK box office that equals 54. The big thing in the movie is that he's making the phrase man down to mean I love you, and love equals 54. I also mentioned I love you equals 43 and 61. God equals 61. Jesus equals 61. Jesus Christ equals 43. I love you equals 404 satanic, which not going to go into that, but that's a big number connecting to Pope Francis, Prince Charles. Also, Gabriel Drummer, the character he plays in this movie, equals 74, like Jesus, like Masonic, like Cross, like Messiah, like Yeshua, like Joshua. I mean, so many examples. Independence Day, the United States Independence Day on 7/4. The only state to equal 74 is the 33rd state. Jesus died on the cross age 33, at least according to the Freemasons who wrote the Bible. Anyway, you know, I'm trying to just move it along here. Even when I was looking this up, somebody on Masonic Wikipedia here, they even changed stuff right as I was looking it up. A U.S. Marine named Lesbian Humper, right? Lesbian Humper. And then later on, it changed back to Gabriel. Just wanted to show it here. And, you know, it's just, I swear, it's just because they wanted me to see this name, Gabriel. And when I looked it up, they even changed it back on 4-5. You know, Gabriel equals 45. And I talked about the movie Constantine that Shia LaBeouf is also in, and it's all about the angel Gabriel trying to use the spear of destiny to bring Mammon back to Earth. A little side note, spear of destiny equals 666 in Gematria, and the person who supposedly stabbed Jesus in the side is Longinus, that equals 666 in Gematria. I also wrote in here, I find it weird that last night I posted about transgendered bathroom law yet again. Then today I was watching Let's Make a Deal. I went away for a bit and came back and Dr. Phil was on, and it was about some transgendered prostitute kid. And the reason that I bring that up was because of the movie Constantine, where Gabriel is played by a woman and portrayed as androgynous. And androgynous even equals 54, just like Gabriel. Also, in regards to Muhammad and Islam, Islam equals 54, and supposedly Gabriel, the angel Gabriel, was the one who he had his first vision with. Also, if you go back, Michelle Obama equals 54, and if you go way back to my College World Series videos, I talked a whole lot about the number 54 and what it had to do with transgendered and whatnot. So, just interesting. I even found that the history of androgyny goes back to a myth about people who used to be spherical. The male-female people come from the moon. And whatever, so they were the male-female people. They supposedly come from the moon. It's mixed in with the space theme that I've been talking about, the space theme that I feel like I'm being shown. These people were spherical, which fits in with all the flat earth stuff that I've been showing as well. And, well, here it is right here. Literally, I make this post about Shia LaBeouf, and I sit down and start watching TV with my girlfriend, and we were watching The Simpsons, and in the Simpsons episode, it had Bart dressed up like a girl, and he was playing with his sisters, and I'm thinking, interesting in regards to all this transgendered stuff. And after that, we watched That 70s Show, and That 70s Show was a Halloween episode, and it had Fez dressed up in drag like Rocky Horror Picture Show. I'm going, what in the world is going on? Then later, after my girlfriend goes to bed, and my computer was up on the charger or whatever, and she goes to bed, I go back and get my computer, and the first thing that I pull up is yahoo.com, and there's, of course, an article about Heath Ledger on there. And basically, you know, I go through this whole thing. The first thing that I truly think of when I think of Heath Ledger is the movie The Patriot. And my girlfriend will even vouch for me. Like, it used to be one of my, like, favorite movies. I still enjoy the movie, even though I know that it's all, you know, bullshit. But I still enjoy the movie for some weird reason. And I always know him from being Gabriel in that movie. And then, of course, you know, the next thing I think of is the Joker and whatnot. But just interesting. That is really the first thing that I always think of with him is Gabriel. And on that movie, his name's Gabriel Martin. And my Gabe Rygard video, his real name is Gabriel Martin Rygard, you know. So, I don't know. I just found that really interesting that there would even be a Heath Ledger thing on there reminding me of Gabriel again. And I found out the Patriot in Gematria equals 513 in Gematria, which is interesting because if you write out Angel Gabriel, it also equals 513. And in this post, whenever I get to it, I'll bring up the number 513 a whole lot again. But anyways, gonna scroll through some of these posts. It's funny in regards to basketball, how I did mention in this post though, that you know, in regards to the Joker and whatnot, we had Tamerlan, one of the Boston bombing guys, right? And his name is the Celtic Warrior. If you look up Tamerlan, the ancient guy, He's the Celtic warrior, and his name means Iron Man. So hopefully that makes sense. Tamerlan dealing with the Boston bombing means Iron Man, and then his brother was Jokar or whatever that reminded us of the Joker. So like Joker, Iron Man, Tamerlan, the Celtic warrior. I even wrote in here possibly a sign for the upcoming finals. And then the day Isaiah Thomas lost his tooth, Sheamus or whatever in wrestling knocked out Jeff Hardy's tooth, just like Isaiah Thomas's tooth fell out, and Sheamus is also the Celtic warrior. So possibly we'll see that. Possibly all of the Houston stuff that I've been talking about. I said there is a weird connection that goes back to the Warriors, and maybe that's really truly what all of it is. There's always all of this interrelated stuff, and you have to figure out what exactly is going on with it. But anyway, I also noticed that Heath Ledger has identical gematria to my name in Jewish gematria. And this was a big number I talked about in regards to my uncle and the Miami Dolphins and Ryan Tannehill and Dan Marino. Not going to keep talking about it. But the reason that it really stuck out in regards, so I talk about Shia LaBeouf and I talk about the Angel Gabriel, then I get on the computer and there's an article about Gabriel, right? He reminds me of Gabriel from the movie The Patriot. After I make this post, later that night, I sit down and literally the movie The Patriot is on TV. And it's on channel 135. Gabriel equals 135. What are the odds of that, It also, in the description, it says it's the Steven Seagal movie, but you can totally tell it's the Mel Gibson one. And so I looked up Steven Seagal, and I was also listening to the Gematria Effect that night, and right when Zach said something about Damascus and the book of Daniel 17:1, but I'm pretty sure he meant Isaiah, but he said Daniel for whatever reason, because there's no such thing as Daniel 17 or whatever. But right when he said that, I saw that Steven Seagal is a 7th Dan black belt. And I thought, interesting that, he mentions Daniel right when I read the word Dan. And I looked up Damascus. Damascus equals 135, just like Gabriel. And it's also nicknamed the city of Jasmine, which is interesting because that's my girlfriend's name. So who knows, just some interesting stuff. I also went on to mention some other stuff about Steven Seagal and being friends with Vladimir Putin. And we got all the Russia stuff and whatnot. Another thing that I just discovered a few seconds ago is, and I mean possibly nothing, but it just seems very strange. And a lot of the stuff in regards to Gabriel that really kept leading me into it was the number 326. And I just realized that my girlfriend's last name in Satanic Gematria equals 326. And if you don't know, a while back I was talking about how all of a sudden my girlfriend was randomly pregnant and whatnot. And it was just after my uncle had died. And then she went to her ultrasound and they said that it was twins. And then 2 days later, she had to go back and they said that it was a miscarriage. And it was just very strange. There was twin stuff going on in my life. I was talking about how there was a twin theme in the news even. There was the twin astronauts, and then Beyonce was pregnant with twins. And there was a bunch of twin stuff. And then we found out she was pregnant with twins. And then 2 days later has a miscarriage somehow. And then just a couple weeks ago or something, she cracked open an egg and it had the 2 yolks in it. And she texted her friend because she'd never seen it before and whatever, didn't think anything of it. And she showed me what he texted back. And he said, well, that means, according to ancient folklore, that means that you're pregnant with twins, or also someone in your family is going to die soon. And I just thought, well, how interesting, that she would crack this egg, and that means something in regards to twins even. I mean, and there was a few other things, I can't think of them off the top of my head. Just some weird stuff going on with this theme. And, you know, I don't know. It's just strange stuff. And then her last name equals this, connected to Gabriel. Gabriel talked to Zechariah, letting him know that his wife was going to have John the Baptist, you know, and he talked to Mary, letting her know that she was going to birth Jesus Christ. Just some weird stuff, you know. So let's get back to this original post. I know it's way long into the video, but I just was randomly typing in, you know, we had learned reverse gematria and whatnot. So I just was randomly typing in some of my family members again. I knew that my daughter and my nephew equaled the same thing. Their full names both equaled 184 in gematria. And when I just typed in my nephew's not full name, you know, his name's Colin Ryan Hansen, but if you just type Colin Hansen, I noticed it equaled 326 in Jewish gematria. And I just thought it was really strange. So his birthday was also, and my birthday are also 10 months and 12 days apart, which is a big number I've talked about in regards to the death of my uncle, and also how it connected to Christopher Columbus, because he supposedly discovered America on October 12th, and this was also Aleister Crowley's birthday. You really need to either watch some of my old videos or just come to my blog and go back a few months and just start reading through for a lot of this to make sense. But, you know, my uncle was a 4th degree Knight of Columbus, and that's another reason why it synced up so much to 1012. The 316 has me wondering now too, because I just discovered that in Satanic Gematria, Jasmine equals 316, and we just had the death of Aaron Hernandez that was super synced up to the number 316, and also connected to Florida with, you know, Tim Tebow in the 316 game. Who knows, you know, got some more research to do into that now, but anyway, so later that night, so I noticed that my nephew's name equaled 326, this number connected to Gabriel. I got on Facebook, and the first thing that was on there, and the reason I got on Facebook was to check and make sure that that was his birthday. For some reason, I didn't know for sure if it was the 29th or the 27th of December. And I got on there, and the first thing that was on there was a post by this girl I know, Beth Vogt. And basically, and this is even funnier in regards to the king symbolism now that I'm thinking about it, basically she had this big post about how Steve King is a racist and nobody likes him and doesn't want Steve King in Iowa, and she wanted to elect to get him out of there and get some other lady. But the first thing I read is, I had the pleasure of assisting the New York Times reporter Trip Gabriel. And I'm like, what are the odds of that, you know? The only reason I even went to Facebook was because of Gabriel. And the first thing that pops up is a thing about Trip Gabriel. And in Gematria, Trip Gabriel equals 513 in English Gematria. And this whole post was, she was in Denison, Iowa, a place that I've mentioned a whole bunch of times throughout my videos and whatnot, but Denison, Iowa equals 513 satanic. Congressman equals 513 satanic. The girl who wrote this, her name equals 513 satanic. If you write out Angel Gabriel, it equals 513 in satanic gematria. So I thought, how interesting, you know, maybe there's some stuff I missed in regards to Denison, Iowa. I really talked about it in regards to the Native American theme that led me up to, you know, thinking that it was going to be the Indians and the Cubs in the World Series. It was all connected to Chief Yellow Smoke, and Brandon Scherf, the Washington Redskin, was from Denison, Iowa, and Yellow Smoke Park is in Denison. A ton of stuff with it. But anyway, I see a guy with the last name Hansen, just like my nephew. And go figure, he's the head of NASA's Goddard Institute for Space Studies. You know what I'm talking about, the space theme, how it's connected to Gabriel. Now I see a famous guy from Denison, Iowa with the last name Hansen. And this town's not even really that big. That's why it's so significant, you know. It's really not that big to have so many people who are of importance, I guess. I also saw a guy named Charles Carpenter, and, you know, I talked a lot about the Key of David, and how Jesus was supposed to have the key, and Francis Scott key. That's why we had all the Colin Kaepernick stuff. It sounds like Francis got key. You know, Pope Francis got the key of David. And then the very next day, we got the death of Keon Carpenter, the ex-Atlanta Falcon player. But interesting, Charles Carpenter equals 166, which was a number that was super significant in all of it. My uncle's name equals 166. He was even born on the 153rd day of the year. Thinking, reminds me of the 153, miraculous catch and whatnot. Also, I looked this up on March 29th, and this Hansen guy is born on March 29th, so it's pretty strange that he had that connection, and it seems that he studied more about climate change than space, but, he's still connected to the space, and his full name equals 65, just like Dennis in Iowa, where he's from. Congressman equals 65. Beth Ann Vogt, the girl from this post, her name equals 65. Climate change equals 56 in Gematria, The reflection of 65, but Dennis in Iowa also equals 56. And, yeah, it was the New York Times reporter. That's why I wrote this in here, Trip Gabriel. And the New York Times is owned by a guy who is 65 years old. And if you went from March 29th to the other guy, the Carpenter guy's birthday, is a span of 65 days. I thought that was interesting. In talking about this too, and reading back through some of these, a lot of them have to do with after I listen to the Gematria Effect or while I'm listening to the Gematria Effect, which is interesting. It's on Wednesday nights, and who knows? I mentioned in regards to Aaron Hernandez how he's connected to Odin and also Mercury, and he even died on a Wednesday, and Wednesday is named after the god Odin because it used to be called Woden's Day and whatnot. But anyway, I mentioned that I'm listening to the Gematria Effect, and then I went on to go watch some of Zach's videos because I was just so far behind, and the first video that's up on his deal is the death of Juan Gabriel, right? What are the odds? He has a video about Juan Gabriel. This guy died months back, and I remember when the guy died because I had just left band practice, and I always go to this Mexican restaurant called Juventino's when I'm done before I come home, and they had on their TV this guy dying or whatever. So I knew he didn't recently die, and I just thought it was interesting. Zach had a video on it. How many months later? It was clear back in August, and this post was from March 29th. Anyway, Juventino's, the restaurant I was at, equals 140 died, just like Zachary K. Hubbard. It equals 121 in reverse, just like my name. And also, in regards to Daniel and Zachariah, Zach's birthday is 3 months and 26 days after 3/26. I guess that's if you include the end date, but still interesting. 3 months, 26 days after 3/26. I mentioned Angel Gabriel equals 5/13. Also, 5 months, 13 days is sometimes 166 days, not through February, but there's other times where it's 166 days. And if you write out May 13th, which is 5/13, it equals 166. May 13th can also be 13/5, a lot like 135, Gabriel equals 135. Clear back when the death of Prince happened, I made a video, and YouTube kept showing me this video by giving my old videos weird copyright claims. So it's just interesting. I've been talking about this date for a year. I'm interested to see if we get a big news story on May 13th this year. It is the 133rd day of the year. President equals 133. Government equals 133. White House equals 133. Also, so Beth's post on Facebook was about the New York Times that will be 166 years old this year. And she was basically supporting this lady, Kim Weaver, and to be the congresswoman instead of Steve King, Congresswoman equals 166 in Gematria. And actually, it's not this lady, but if you look up Kim Weaver, the only one that comes up on Wikipedia is a lady who works for NASA. So before I want to keep moving on here, but I have to upload these videos in 15-minute segments. So the second 15-minute was up, and I had to wait, and it takes like 15 or 20 minutes to load to my computer, and then I can start talking again. And what's funny is I decided to turn the TV on, and randomly I just kind of scrolled through, and I noticed that the movie Kick-Ass was on. It's on channel 133. And no big deal, you know. I'm just sitting here, I'm kind of doing some research on the computer, and I hear what I thought I heard on the TV was they were doing like a remake of how the comic character began or whatever. And he said when Daddy was in prison, Mommy was left at home pregnant all alone or whatever. And I thought that he said when Danny was in prison, Mommy was left at home pregnant all alone and couldn't cope. And I started thinking, weird, I'm talking about Daniel, whatever, pregnant, you know, the Angel Gabriel, and whatever. So no big deal, but I decided to, it's not, he says Daddy, not Danny, but I looked up the movie Kick-Ass, and look what it comes out. It came out on March 26th, you know, the date connecting to Gabriel. Just craziness. What are the odds of that? You know, it's some weird stuff. And it was pure by accident, you know. I just looked up, randomly see it on TV, figured I would watch the movie, haven't watched it, you know, just kind of listen to it. Of course, it has a connection to Gabriel. Same stuff I'm talking about. But anyway, let's go back to this post. I want to get through this because there's some really interesting stuff in regards to Montegraph, or whatever his name is, the Umbrella Man, making a video in regards to the number 166, or he says 166, and something significant is going to happen with that. And it is super connected to all of this, and it is the strangest stuff in the world, almost as if, like, when I'm listening to the Gematria Effect, it's almost as if they knew exactly what I was doing when that show was going on. But let's finish up what I had here, because I want to show how it's connected to the Virgin Mary as well. And also, you know how the Angel Gabriel is connected to Mary, Zechariah, and Daniel. If you recall, Zach was talking about a long time ago about how, you know, he was just making a post or whatever because of a bunch of people giving him crap or whatever. But he went through and, like, was joking, like, you could say, I'm Christ reborn too and not Judas Iscariot. But he talked about how his mom was born on September 9th, which can be written 9/8 or 8/9. And his full name equals 89. His dad's full name equals 89. And whatever, you know. King James equals 89. Religion equals 89. But basically, you know, there was stuff connecting to, you know, his mom was born on September 9th, or September 8th. I think I said September 9th, but September 8th, which could be written 8/9, and that is also the day that supposedly the Virgin Mary was born. And that's why it's so interesting in regards to all of this. But anyway, in regards to what I was talking about before all of that, May 13th, right? If you go from my birthday to May 13th, it's a span of 184 days. This post that I started began with me looking up my family again, and I noticed my daughter's name equaled 184, my nephew's name equals 184, and, you know, my birthday 184 days before May 13th. And there's something super connected to the death of my uncle, who died on January 14th. And, well, I'm not even going to read it out, but Claire equals 114 in Gematria, and I can't remember what it was. There was a connection with 114 with my nephew as well. But if you go from my uncle's death to May 13th, 3 months, 29 days, I made this post on 3/29. I also mentioned how May 13th this year has a date numerology of 55, and it's the day that leaves 232 days in the year. Satan equals 55 in Gematria, also 232 in Jewish. The word God also equals 55 in Gematria. And in doing this and noticing this in regards to Gabriel, I'm not so sure that what is showing me this is truly what a normal person would think is the Angel Gabriel. I think it's something a little more sinister than that, because even if you look up, some people believe that Muhammad didn't talk to the Angel Gabriel. It was actually this guy in disguise, and Angel Gabriel, we'll just look it up really quick. Angel Gabriel in Gematria equals 93, just like Saturn. So, well, whatever, I capitalized it, but I gotta hold a microphone while I talk too. Angel Gabriel equals Saturn. This 513 number, all these connections that have been in Satanic Gematria just really make me wonder, like, what exactly am I dealing with by doing all this? Is it, I don't know. Possibly it is, the good guy, whatever else, but just, I don't know. Seems pretty, it just makes me question a lot of things. So anyway, in regards to May 13th, the Christian feast day, May 13th is the Christian feast day and anniversary of Our Lady Fatima in 1917, which was a Marian apparition where these three girls supposedly saw the Virgin Mary and whatnot. That's what a Marian apparition is. And when Gabriel came to Mary and told her that she was going to birth Jesus or whatever, it's called the Annunciation that equals 54 and 135, just like Gabriel equals 54 and 135. September 8th, I wrote September 8th, but it's September 9th. September 8th, which is Mary's birthday, is the 251st day of the year. 251 is the 54th prime number. Just think about that. Annunciation, Gabriel, she's born on the 251st day that, coincides with the 54th prime number. This year, on her birthday, it has a date numerology of 54. And it's also the day that leaves 114 days in the year. Once again, connecting back to January 14th. And this might be a little confusing here, but if you go from September 8th to my uncle's birthday, a span of 318 days, 318 supposedly the God number. 318, the only time it's mentioned in the Bible is in regards to Dan. Also, supposedly the second coming of Jesus Christ is mentioned 318 times in the New Testament. What's interesting too about, I didn't show this, but kick-ass that I just talked about, kick-ass equals 318 in Satanic Gematria. And there's a whole lot more to go with 318. Prince Charles was born on the 318th day of the year in a non-leap year. Princess Diana died on 31/8. It's also a number that we've associated with the reverse of pi and whatnot, but not going to get into that. But we'll skip over some of this stuff here. If you go from May 13th to the recognized birthday of Mary, it's a span of 3 months, 26 days. How interesting is that, It's super connected. 326 is the syntax of Gabriel. Now we got these two dates connected to 326. And if you go from 326 then to the recognized birthday of Mary, a span of 166 days, or also 5 months, 13 days. So anyway, moving on with the story, the other day, for whatever the reason, or whatever day it was, April 25th, 26th, I was just reading through Zach's blog. Like, I usually read through his blog pretty much every single day. And I noticed that he had this blog post in regards to the new movie called Rings. And when I first came back here on YouTube, I talked about how there was a ring theme that was going on in my life. And I made this big, long blog post about it, but I never posted it. And the main reason I didn't post it was because I talked about my girlfriend having a miscarriage, and she was still like on bed rest, and we weren't for sure what was going on. I didn't want to say anything. And then later on, I just kind of spaced it off. I didn't realize I didn't, repost it or whatever, or finish it. There was more that I was going to talk about. And I guess it's just interesting, He has a blog post, a reader contribution in regards to the movie The Ring in 7 days. And I talked about how this ring thing came up in my life in regards to Gabriel Iglesias. And also I watched the new movie called Arrival that is about these aliens that come to Earth, and they're trying to teach the humans their language, and it's all a language based in rings, right? And Saturn is the Lord of the Rings, Saturn the keeper of time. And if humans learn this language of rings, then they can see time in a different perspective. And the main character or whatever can see into the future, and then she sees that her daughter is going to die of cancer and whatnot. So I'll leave a link to the video I made the other day where I explained a little bit of this. But I just wanted to mention that I watched this movie called Arrival that was all about this ring language, and then like a few days later or whatever it was, I ended up watching the movie called Rings, not even realizing it, not even putting it together at the time. And I did a little history, and I went back and looked at some of these other Ring movies, and they were connected to some of the stuff that I've been talking about. Also in this movie here, this new Rings movie, basically what happens in the movie is this girl's boyfriend goes to college or whatever, and he gets involved with the movie The Ring because the professor watched the movie or whatever, and he's trying to learn more about it or whatever. And they start a group called the Sevens, and they get somebody to watch the movie and make a copy and whatnot so the next person doesn't die. But it's that professor's name is Gabriel. So I guess that's the moral of the story that I'm getting at. The professor's name is Gabriel. Of all people, of all names, his name is Gabriel. So I went back and watched some of the old Rings movies, and I believe this is the first one. It might be the second one, but they show the birth certificate of the girl who is the killer or whatever, and it's even in district number 318. And the girl's name is Samara, that equals 318 in Sumerian, and in Jewish Gematria equals 203. And the interesting thing about that is if you write out 318, it equals 203. Her full name is Samara Morgan, that equals 203 in reverse. It even says that the cinematography was by Gabriel. Who knows if that is significant, but look when the movie came out. This is the second one too, 3/18 of 2005. The second movie came out on 3/18. The killer is all about 318. Her birth certificate is district number 318. Even as I was writing up this post, there was a commercial on TV about ringing in the ears. And I thought, what are the odds of that, So I noticed all this Ring Gabriel stuff that was going on. And I even talked about the cracked egg here and my girlfriend. And whatever. Just because I read this post, for some reason, it made me go back and just type it in again and see if I saw some significance. And all of a sudden, it makes so much more sense. The ring in Satanic Gematria equals 326. Arrival, the other movie that I watched involving rings in Satanic Gematria, equals 326, that date that is special to Gabriel. in the Ring movie, they start the group called the Sevens that equals 36 and 45, just like Gabriel, just like the Ring. The movie Arrival equals 36. I also watched the movie Arrival on 3/6. It's pretty interesting. Also, you know what? I just had to do the little break thing again, and I went to CNN just to see if there was any headline stories on CNN. And we have this story: Prince Philip, 95-year-old husband of Queen Elizabeth, to step down from public life today. On May 4th, look at Prince Philip in Gematria. 135, just like Gabriel. You know, what are the odds of that? And it's interesting, you know, he's not really the king, but he's married to the queen, so you kind of associate king with this guy. And now he's stepping down. And I'm telling you, with the Isaiah Thomas stuff, it's all about king symbolism, you know? So just interesting, this guy's stepping down. Just wanted to point that out really quick. You know, just whatever. I'm just sitting here. And it just never ends, you know? But anyway, this movie Arrival came out on November 11th of 2016. If you go to March 26th, a span of 135 days. And I have another post on this, but it's very interesting in regards to Gabriel possibly. But the movie Arrival is about these 7-limbed aliens. And in the movie Rings, it's all about, you know, she's going to come back and kill you in 7 days. So we got the 7-ringed alien, or 7-limbed aliens, and then the girl on the rings is going to kill you in 7 days. And there just so happens to be 7 archangels. And, you know, this isn't necessarily straight from the Bible. This is like the, you know, according to the book of Enoch and whatnot. So just saying, there is a group of people who believe there are 7 archangels, even though it doesn't necessarily specify that in the Bible. But just pretty interesting. There's something in regards to 7, you know, 7 rings, 7-limbed aliens, 7 I can't even say it now. Archangels, angels. Also in the book of Daniel, you know, Gabriel talked to Daniel. Gabriel expands on Jeremiah's prediction of 70 years is actually 70 weeks. And on Wikipedia, it even says literally 7. Let's see what it says here. Literally 7s of years, right? So 7s once again. Even on the movie The Ring, or the new movie Rings, the secret group is called the Sevens. So I guess when I was writing up this post, I was listening to the Gematria Effect, and exactly the time that I read on Wikipedia, like I was researching and listening to it at the same time, but exactly when I read this part about the 7 archangels, right, there's a part in here that I read, it says Cancer ruled by the moon, or ruled by moon, and right when I read that piece, Zach on his show literally says Cancer ruled by the moon. And he was talking about it in regards to Neil Armstrong landing on the moon in the sign of Cancer. But what are the odds? I'm just researching, and right when I read Cancer ruled by the moon, he literally says Cancer ruled by the moon. And, you know, I looked up Gematria Effect and the Gematria Effect. I didn't see the connection, why it always happens when I'm watching that show, other than the fact that it's on a Wednesday, and there's been some other connections to Wednesdays and whatnot. But Truth Frequency Radio that it's on in Francis Bacon Gematria equals 326, just like Arrival, just like The Ring. I also noticed up here, I mean, it just has some other ideas in regards to the archangels and whatnot. And it talks about this guy, Rudolf Steiner, and later on he says, winter is Gabriel, Gabriel is Saturn. And how interesting is that? Because in Gematria, Gabriel, Angel Gabriel equals 93, just like Saturn. So, I already talked about that earlier. But let's move on to there's just so many things. I've documented so many odd things that keep happening to me. So I guess Monograph makes this video in regards to Zach, and he tells him that the secret number is 166. And in Zach's post, he even mentions how he just watched my video, and I talk about the number 166 a whole lot. And, I just want to repoint out reverse gematria equals 166. Big Brother equals 166. Twin Towers, Secret Society equal 166. It's a important number, but it's interesting that Monograph would make this video and then he would use the number 166, a number that I just keep talking about over and over. Ever since he made that video in regards to Zach and whatever, and then the next day Zach's house got ran into by a car, weird, crazy stuff has been super ramped up in my life ever since that day. There was some strange things before, but ever since then, everything that I've talked about, it comes up in the media. It's connected to my life. So it's just weird. And I don't even know what to think in regards to it, but I went and I left a comment to Zach on his blog in regards to this, just to try to help him out, try to figure out some other 166s, I talked about Big Brother. The video that Monograph put out, he also put it out 166 days after my birthday. I also mentioned that on his channel or whatever, he only had 3 little posts left up that I could view, and the third one was from a year ago, and it said DB SF April 17. And I just found that interesting in regards to my initials being DB and then April of 2017. And whatever, I talked about some other stuff in regards to Trump, but I also went on to tell him I have a bunch of posts in regards to 166, 326, and the Angel Gabriel and how it's connected to Zachariah, Daniel, and Mary. And, because he only came to them 3 people in the Bible and whatnot. And I was just telling him all the stuff I've just talked about. And I just really summed it up, or shortened it up, because there's so much to talk about. And also on 326, the movie Oblivion that says that the last Super Bowl ever played is in 2017, when he's fixing the drone 166. And Monograph was talking about something in New York, and in that movie, he's wearing the New York hat or whatever. And what's strange about it is, the reason I wrote that in there was just because I've noticed all these connections, and I've honestly wondered if there was anybody, any truth seeker or whatever you want to call it out there named Mary, just that would fit with this agenda. I never wrote it in there, but that's what I've been wondering forever, is if something to do with Mary is ever going to come up. I always hear there's lots of stuff connecting to Daniel and Zachariah, but not so much about anyone named Mary. And later on, when I watched listened to the Gematria Effect, a lady named Mary called in. And when she called in, she was the only person who called in even and talked about Monograph and the new video. And she said that she was the new victim, one of his newest victims and whatnot. And it stood out to me right away. She said her name was Mary Toffelmeyer. And in Gematria, Mary Toffelmeyer equals 166, the exact number Monograph was talking about. And the video that she was talking about was this video that he made about her on March 3rd, 3/3, and it's all about getting her fired. He even capitalizes fired. Fired in Gematria equals 33. And I don't know if this lady, whatever, I'm not trying to call this lady out or anything, but interesting when you go to her channel, you know, she has a picture here with the number 33 on it. Montagraph attacks her on 3-3, and the whole thing is that he's going to try to get her fired at her job. Fired equals 33. The day that all this happened was 54 days after this video was put out on 3-3. You know, Gabriel equals 54. It even says that I have 54 notifications at the time. 54 notifications, which is weird because I've had 99 for a really long time. So no big deal, you know. Some lady named Mary calls in, and she's talking about it, and just after I talk about Zach, Daniel, and Mary, and I thought that was strange enough, but some of the things that she was bringing up, she was talking about how Monograph said he was at her front door, and she was scared because she doesn't want anyone to hurt her pet pig. And then later on, she calls Monograph a pig and whatnot, and like she was mentioning pig, and I'm like, what in the world is, why pig, you know? And I have a clip here. You can come to my blog and watch it for yourself. I have to hold the mic up to a speaker. It's not going to work. Well, I'll just try it, but we'll just see what happens here. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. You come to the blog, but we'll just play this clip really quick just to show that she was talking about pigs.
I have a pet pig. I have a baby pig, and I don't want to leave the house because I'm not going to come home and find him hurt.
Sure, this guy, and I'm sorry. Somebody.
I told him what a sick pig he was, and he said, "Did you think I was going to sit back and let you, say this about me?"
Wow.
Most people, I haven't responded to him.
So whatever. You probably couldn't hear it, but she's talking about her pet pig and calling him a pig. And no lie, earlier in the night, my daughter had these two baby pigs or whatever. She had a baby pig, and I was supposed to take care of it. And I said, "Who's the dad?" And she said, "You're the father," or whatever, you know. And like I laughed about it because she was the mom, whatever. And she went to bed, and I was still downstairs, and I put these two pigs next to me, not even thinking anything of it. I told her I'll watch them. She went to bed, and they were sitting on the couch next to me. No big deal, you know. And then I'm watching this episode or listening to this episode, and all of a sudden I realized, you know what? I am sitting next to two pet pigs, like they were supposed to be my pets. And now this lady, in regards to the Gabriel stuff and named Mary, she's calling in talking about pigs. So I just want to play this video and show you that there really was pigs sitting next to me. All right, here we go. The two pet pigs, right? Two stuffed animal pigs. This little baby one, and then the piggy bank right here. It just, seriously, it blew me away. Like, how in the world? It's almost like someone can see what I'm doing. You know what I mean? Strange stuff. Pigs in Jewish Gematria equals 166. So, I don't know. You know, they would know, they could, people could call in and say that their name's Mary and make it connect to what I've talked about because I left a thing on the blog. But there's no way they knew I was sitting next to, like, pet pigs. You know, pretend pet pigs. So then I went to the video that Monograph was referring to on 3.3 in regards to Zach. And at the top of the comments, of course, is someone named Archangel 777, right? And I just talked about how I'm supposed to see the sevens. And then it's in regards to the 7 archangels and 7 days and the 7-limbed aliens. I also noticed that it said, you know, 33 likes and 3 replies, a lot like 333. Sorry, I was looking up here at the likes and dislikes. It was at 203, a number of Houston Rockets equal 203. The God number is connected to 203. I looked up this person, and like I'm saying, I don't know if these people are bad, but interesting, you know, look, they have 77 subscribers, Archangel 777. So, you know, lots of strange stuff. I'm going to leave it at that. Just wanted to document for other people to see. Have a good